Hello friends, one of the most courageous military commanders in history, widely recognized as the most powerful man in Europe, was Napoleon Bonaparte. He is remembered as one of the most controversial figures in history. Some people admire him for his brilliance, his reforms, and his daring spirit, while others call him ruthless, power-hungry, and the cause of immense bloodshed. Even today, questions are asked about the truth behind him. Was Napoleon a hero of the masses, or one of history's greatest villains? Director Ridley Scott is about to release his new film Napoleon, starring Joaquin Phoenix, and the trailer promises a gripping portrayal of this legendary figure. Since so many of us will soon see Napoleon on the big screen, this is the perfect time to explore his life and ask, who was this man really? Napoleon was born on the 15th of August, 1769, on the island of Corsica. If you look at the map, Corsica is nestled between France and Italy, a small island with a complex history. During the 1700s, Corsica was under the control of the Republic of Genoa, a state that no longer exists today. The Corsican people, however, were restless under foreign rule. They were inspired by ideas of nationalism and longed to be free. A man named Pasquale Paoli became their leader, a hero who fought for Corsican independence. Young Napoleon idolized him deeply. But in 1768, the Republic of Genoa sold Corsica to France because of its mounting debts, and the island soon became a battleground. In 1769, just months before Napoleon was born, French forces crushed the Corsican rebels in the Battle of Pont-Nouveau. Corsica was absorbed into France, and Napoleon's life began under the shadow of lost independence. Napoleon's father, Carlo Bonaparte, initially supported the Corsican freedom fighters. But when Paoli fled into exile, Carlo switched sides and pledged loyalty to the French monarchy. With his new connections, Carlo rose in status and even gained nobility. This betrayal left a bitter taste in Napoleon's mouth. He considered his father a coward and a deserter. Yet, ironically, it was Carlo's influence that allowed Napoleon and his brother Joseph to attend prestigious schools in France. Napoleon enrolled in a French military college, where he was often mocked by other students for his accent and Corsican roots. He kept to himself, filled with resentment against what he saw as his colonizers. Books became his refuge. He devoured the works of Enlightenment philosophers, especially Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who had praised the bravery of Corsicans. He also admired Plutarch's parallel lives, which compared historical figures like Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great. Young Napoleon dreamed of greatness too. He trained in Paris as an artillery officer, excelling in mathematics, geography, and strategy. By 1789, when the French Revolution erupted, Napoleon's ambitions began to merge with the tides of history. He still hoped Corsica would gain freedom, especially when his childhood hero Paoli returned after 20 years of exile. But Paoli rejected Napoleon's family, calling them traitors. Eventually, Napoleon and his family were forced to flee Corsica in 1793. That same year, France was in chaos, civil war, revolts, and the rise of radical groups like the Jacobin led by Maximilien Robespierre. Napoleon sided with the Jacobin, and his career quickly advanced. His big break came in 1793 during the Siege of Toulon. A group of rebels had allowed the British Navy to occupy the city, and Napoleon, then a young artillery officer, proposed a daring strategy. He fought bravely, was wounded, but his plan worked. The French retook Toulon. For his brilliance, he was promoted to brigadier general at just 24 years old. Napoleon was on his way to fame, but politics in France were unstable. After Robespierre was overthrown in 1794, Napoleon, who had supported him, was briefly imprisoned. He defended himself and was released, and thanks to his connections with powerful leaders like Paul Barras, he continued rising. In 1795, when royalist forces tried to revolt in Paris, Napoleon famously crushed them in just 2 hours using cannons. This victory made him a national hero, and at only 27, he became a full general. Soon after, he took command of the French army of Italy. His soldiers were poor, undisciplined, and tired. Napoleon inspired them with fiery speeches, urging them not to loot like cowards but to fight with honor. Under his leadership, the army of Italy achieved spectacular victories against Austria, including the legendary Battle of Arcole. Suddenly, Napoleon was more than just a general, he was a legend in the making, but Napoleon's ambitions grew larger. In 1798, instead of invading Britain directly, he proposed attacking Egypt to cut off Britain's route to India and even dreamed of helping Tipu Sultan of Mysore resist the British. He sailed with 40,000 soldiers and also took 160 scientists and artists with him. In Egypt, his forces won great victories like the Battle of the Pyramids, and he established the Institute of Egypt to study the country's history and culture. But his dreams crumbled when the British Navy destroyed the French fleet at the Battle of the Nile. A year later, Napoleon abandoned his army and secretly returned to France. Militarily, the Egyptian campaign was a failure. But thanks to propaganda, newspapers, and grand paintings, Napoleon returned as a hero. Scientists in his campaign had discovered treasures like the Rosetta Stone, which became the key to deciphering ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. And while thousands of soldiers were left behind to die, Napoleon's image in France was carefully crafted as that of a genius, a savior, almost a myth. And speaking of myths, if you're fascinated so far and you love learning about hidden sides of history that schools often skip, then you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Because I bring you stories that will not only surprise you, but also make you look at the past with brand new eyes. Trust me, you don't want to miss the next one. By 1799, France was drowning in corruption and conflict. Napoleon seized the moment and staged a coup. He overthrew the government and became first consul, presenting himself as a leader above politics, a man of destiny. He used referendums to justify his rule, but the results were fabricated. Historians later revealed that when the official figures showed 99.9% support for Napoleon, in reality barely over half supported him. Still, the propaganda machine ensured his popularity. By 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of the French, openly declaring that power was his true love. And from then on, Europe would be shaped by his endless wars. For over a decade, Napoleon fought across the continent, defeating coalition after coalition of monarchies that wanted to stop the spread of revolutionary ideas. Many people in occupied lands initially welcomed him as a liberator. In Italy, he declared he had come to break chains, and revolutionaries praised him as the liberator of peoples. Even Beethoven, the great composer, dedicated his Third Symphony to him until Napoleon crowned himself emperor. Then Beethoven angrily scratched out his name, declaring him just another tyrant. Napoleon's contradictions became clear. He reintroduced slavery in 1802, rolled back rights that women had gained during the Revolution, and censored newspapers. He placed his brothers on the thrones of Spain, Holland, and Westphalia, turning conquered territories into family kingdoms. Yet, at the same time, he also left a legacy that shaped modern Europe. He introduced the Napoleonic Code, which created clear and uniform laws and enshrined equality before the law, at least for men. He abolished feudal privileges, established religious tolerance, modernized the banking system, reformed taxation so everyone paid their share, and built a strong centralized education system. Paris saw improvements in water distribution, markets, and infrastructure under him. Napoleon was a dictator, but he was also an extraordinary administrator whose reforms lasted long after his empire fell. But war consumed him. His attempt to blockade Britain through the continental system eventually drew him into conflict with Russia. In 1812, Napoleon invaded Russia with his Grand Army, but the Russians retreated, burning their own cities and supplies. Napoleon reached Moscow only to find it abandoned and destroyed. With no food, his army froze and starved during the retreat. The once unstoppable emperor had been humbled. The following year, in the Battle of Leipzig, a coalition of Britain, Russia, Austria, Prussia, and others dealt Napoleon a crushing defeat. He was exiled to the island of Elba in 1814, but Napoleon's story was not over. In 1815, he escaped Elba, rallied his loyal soldiers, and marched back to Paris. For 100 days, he ruled again until his final defeat at the Battle of Waterloo. After that, he was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena, where he spent the last years of his life. In 1821, he died there, far from the glory he once commanded. So what do we make of Napoleon? He was a man of contradictions, both hero and villain. He spread revolutionary ideals but crowned himself emperor. He gave Europe modern laws and institutions but left millions dead in his wars. He longed for Corsican independence as a boy, but as a man, he trampled on the independence of nations. He was brilliant, ambitious, ruthless, and flawed. And maybe that's why his story still fascinates us more than 2 centuries later. Now that you know the story, I want to hear from you. Was Napoleon Bonaparte a hero who transformed Europe or a villain who destroyed countless lives for his lust for power? Comment below with your thoughts. I'll be reading every single one of them.